Okay, so we are going to move on to the third of our River Valley civilizations. Now we're in ancient China. So we're going to talk about why did civilization develop in China's river valleys. You should have the aim written down in your notebook, including the number, and the aim should be written exactly as it's shown here. Why did civilization develop in China's river valleys? So again, if we're asking why did this happen here, this is kind of a geography focus again, okay? So you see, every time we start a new river valley civilization, we discuss the geography and the implications of the geography for lifestyle. So you guys answer the do now question, and on we go. All right, I'll give you a second. Okay, so when we're talking about river valleys here in China, we're talking about two different rivers. So just like Mesopotamia had the Tigris and Euphrates, ancient China is going to be shaped by two rivers: the Huanghe, or Yellow River as it's called, and the Yangtze River. Both of these rivers will behave a little bit differently, but they both perform kind of essentially the same function, which is the same as Egypt and the same as Mesopotamia. These rivers flood. That flooding deposits fertile soil, and that fertile soil, once the floodwaters recede, that fertile soil remains and is ideal for agriculture. So that is the importance of the rivers, and these are the two rivers that we're talking about. The other interesting thing about China is kind of an interesting place geographically, because although it is part of a very large continent, it's kind of isolated from other places for a number of reasons, and mostly, the geography. The Pacific Ocean bordering China to the east acts as somewhat of a natural barrier, and you also have what's called the Gobi Desert and the Himalayan mountains, which kind of also serve to isolate China also from other surrounding regions. And even on the kind of the southern end of China here, a lot of this is very dense forest. So this almost has like Amazon jungle effect, where it serves to isolate China geographically also. So those are kind of important things to make note of. All right, next. I'll give you a second. Okay, so with regard to Mesopotamia, the thing about Mesopotamia is the Tigris and Euphrates flooded yearly, but it was unpredictable as far as timing, and it was also unpredictable as far as severity. And then Egypt, the main difference in the geography is that in Egypt, the river flooded on the same time every year. It flooded for the same amount of time, and it was the same kind of severity every time. So it was super duper predictable what was going to happen with the river with regard to flooding, as far as when and how crazy it was going to be. So China, each of the two rivers in China, one behaves differently from the other. So the Yangtze River is more like the Nile in Egypt, where it's stable, it's predictable, it's mild. You can plan your life around it, and it's easier to manage because of the predictability. The Yellow River was a different story. It was totally unpredictable and oftentimes super duper extreme. So this is more like Tigris and Euphrates, probably even worse. When it's really, really bad, and you can see the photography here. This is, in China, in a city along the banks of the Yellow River, and you could see the impact that the flooding of the river is having on this particular community. So it was so extreme that it made it very, very difficult to deal with. The infrastructure that's in place in order to handle the flooding in one season might be fine, but in the very next season, it might not be good enough. And that's what you're kind of seeing here. So you have one river that behaves one way and another river that behaves, an entirely different way. So the important takeaway here is that the same process is at work. It's the flooding of the rivers, the silt that is deposited on riverbanks from that flooding, and the use of that silt to perform, effective agriculture. That's really the main takeaway here.